promise you my life.
Hello, how's it going? I'm Bonnie Violet. I'm a trans, femme, genderqueer, spiritual drag artist, and digital chaplain. And in case you don't know where you are, you've found yourself at Drag and Spirituality as part of my Idaho Drag is Divine series with my special guest, Vice, this evening. For those who've never been here before, you're here. Basically, what we're going to do is we're going to take the next 45 minutes and speak with a friend about their experience with drag and spirituality and how those may intersect, or maybe they don't, but we will soon find out. Feel free to ask questions and make comments as you're watching us live, or if you're listening to us after the fact, check out the links in the description to get connected with us after the show. All right. Well, I'm going to go ahead and bring on our guest and just get this show on the road. Hello.
Hi.
Hi, how are you?
I'm good. How are you?
I'm good. I'm so glad that you're here with me. Do you want to introduce yourself just real briefly?
My name is Vice. I am a performer who performs in Boise for the most part. Live in Nampa though. Don't perform in Nampa that much because I don't know. It's scary out here when it comes to like the farther you go from Boise, the more phobic it gets. So yeah, I'm just a performer and a producer and a diva. That's about
That
it.
you are. Awesome. Well, I'm so glad. I'm so glad you could be all that and show up tonight. I'm not one that's good with foreplay, so I usually like to just get right into the conversation. And I go to like really chill and just talk about childhood. So what did you learn as a child when it came to spirituality or spiritual matters?
Well, I grew up in a little ranch town in Mexico, in the state of Michoacan. Very rural, houses made of adobe, no transportation, you had to walk everywhere. Totally different. I'm so glad I got that experience of another country. I hope you have, because it's like it could changes your mind completely of how society can be. There's other
Yeah.
ways. Some of them are better, some of them are not. One of them being is that the sense of community there. Like I could go to any house I wanted to in the neighborhood and come back whenever. And in the US everybody's more like to themselves. It's very individualistic. Everybody's inside their fences, paranoid of each other. So that's kind of like something I miss about Mexico, is that sense of community. And it's very tied to religion, which has been something that I've had to think about a lot. Like, for example, over there, when there's a quinceañera or a wedding, everybody in town can come to the church, and then everybody can come to the dance after. And there's no like, since it's rural, there's not really any bars, so that's how people like mingle and date, and like and how they party is they will go from party to party. So it's also a lot more cost effective, I'm sure. But anyway, and that's why kids in like Latinx countries grow up dancing, because we grow up dancing since we're little, which I think is so cool.
Yeah. So it's definitely feels more cultural.
Yeah, and it was rough growing up with that being so intensely part of people's like belief system, because like the homophobia is there, and it's just as horrible as over here. The machismo on top of that, which is just another word for misogyny. And you know, a lot of oppression is interconnected.
Yeah.
And it was rough growing up like that, because then I had to, once I realized I came to terms with being gay, I had to come to terms with the religious part of it, and had to decide, do I want to be part of that, and do I want to fight to be part of something that doesn't want me, and that is going to, and then like once you start with religion, once you start like unraveling a couple of things, that all falls apart. Because it's all just like, growing up when I was little, I was this kid with a very active imagination. So all hearing all like the hellfire, all that condemnation, all that would happen from sinning and from not meeting what the Bible says, or what people say that the Bible says. I really internalized it. So I was really scared a lot of the time.
Hmm.
Like I would be at night and like you know that feeling when you close your eyes and you hear a thump, thump, thump. I don't know if you have that, but I've heard it ever since I was little. I imagine like death like walking towards me. Those
Oh,
are like the
wow.
steps of death, and when it speeds up, it's because death is closer.
Hmm. That sounds terrifying.
Yeah, and we'd get told stories like, oh, like this person was visited by the devil. Like I had a cousin who lived in like they had a outhouse, not like for like going to the bathroom, but just another little building, close to the house because over there you just build wherever. And they said that because he was having premarital sex, that the devil visited him and scratched up the walls. And
Oh, wow.
so there were scratches on the walls, and it was like all those things over there are presented to you as the truth and very real. So I was in constant fear. And then
Yeah.
yeah, then when I was older, trying to get that all out of myself was really difficult. It was one of the hardest decisions I ever had to make in my life because it was and then it was also really mentally and emotionally. I was so depressed. I was suicidal pretty much. I had to
Hmm.
like convince myself that like because you get told that you have no value, I had internalized that, and I had to like progressively like break out of that, and it took years
Yeah. How did you?
to feel like my life had value and that I was worth being alive.
Mm.
Sorry,
How did
that's
you do
hard
that?
stuff.
No, I mean, I asked, I went there. How did you work through that?
It was I think a big lifesaver was moving to the U.S. And it was a lot of my life I've lived like by curiously looking through the internet and finding other communities. And then seeing what's out there because when we grow up there was like very little LGBT representation that was
Hmm.
positive, and it was all pretty bleak. And then things started turning around, and I guess you just grow and you get older and you realize that all the horrible stuff was not true.
Hmm. And then, so did you kind of stay away from the religion once you came to the US, or were you able to just kind of cut that out completely, or?
Yeah, I cut it out completely. I was not interested at all.
Yeah, yeah. And when did drag come into your life? Because I know you started pretty young, so.
Yeah, I started around like 1 or 2 years before Drag Race aired. I like because I told you I was looking at other communities, and I got really like interested in the New York City nightlife because coming here being an immigrant and not having the ability to just be able to like a lot of some people have the ability to like to go somewhere more progressive. That was never an option for me because finding a job is not easy. So trying to leave and like it's just I knew homelessness was like a possibility if I left,
Hmm.
and
And
all these other legal things, and so I decided. So that's how I did it safely. um,
mhm.
and I was inspired by the New York City nightlife scene and people who are doing it like cool androgynous drag that makes high fashion. They were like not having like breasts, and they were like looking like models and doing really avant-garde really fashion forward outfits, and that was really inspiring to me. And so I thought it looked like fun, and that's where I got the bug.
Nice. And you moved directly to Idaho, or did you?
I was in California for a little bit, then I lived in Arizona for a little bit, but most of my young adult life was in Idaho.
Yeah, yeah. Sorry, I thought I was getting. Sorry.
What were
Uh,
you getting?
no, there's just like some noises and stuff around here, so I got a little distracted. So my apologies. Um, so you're in the US, you're checking out the New York. How did the New York night scene, like, how did you translate that to being here, though?
Well, they it was then Drag Race came about, and then I was going to college at the Boise State. Well, CSI first, then Boise State, and then I became president of the LGBT organization, which at
Hmm.
the time was called BGLAD. And
I'm
so I was
familiar
the
with that.
president of that. And that there I they had done shows before, so I kept organizing shows, and those were so fun.
Mhm. Well, and when you and I first met, well, one of the first times we met, and I'm sure we had met before you performed or did drag at the event, but do you want to tell a little bit about that event?
Oh, the one you booked me for?
Yeah, for it was for a national HIV testing like kind of festival that we were doing at Ann Morrison.
Yeah,
Or
I remember
not Ann
exactly
Morrison.
what it was called. It was called Kiss.
Kiss, know your status.
Know your
Yes.
status. And there were a couple of performers who were booked to perform, and I was one of them. And I don't know how I got condoms, but I started handing out condoms to people, and then passersby would like go on their bikes, and I would throw them at them, and it was so
hmm
fun.
Yeah, yeah. Oh, yeah, and I said Ann Morrison, but it was Anne Frank. It was the
And
Anne
Frank
Frank
Memorial,
Memorial.
yeah.
Yeah, yeah. Which was, I think, a fairly new venue at that time, no? Wasn't it pretty
Oh,
new?
really?
I felt like it
I don't.
was.
You know, they don't hold events there very often. I
Mm,
can't think of the last one besides when it was attacked.
yeah,
That
yeah.
people.
Yeah, and so that was a little while ago. Oh, like
Can't tell
like
you the year.
I know, didn't we figure it was like between 10 and 15 years ago, right?
Sure.
Something like that. Yes, yes. And what was drag like for you in the beginning?
um, it was you probably remember the scene here. We didn't have much. We had
hmm
Gemcore, we had pageants, and then the organizations. Some of the organizations that went with pageants. So if you want, and then lip sync. So that lip sync was like the thing that you could aspire to by doing pageants and by performing with Gemcore. So
hmm
and they were like a set cast, so you would hope for like a guest spot sometime. So that was
Right.
like all you could aspire to here, and that's the scene we had. And I didn't quite fit in that scene because I was young and different, and they kind of
hmm
didn't like that. A lot of people didn't get it.
Right.
Some people still don't, and that's fine. That's fine.
Mm. It's definitely
uh,
gotten a lot better though, but I know what you mean. Like
yeah, and so
around.
that's when I got disrespected a couple of times. And one time, I like the last straw for me was when somebody came up to me and said all these misogynistic, horrible, like internalized homophobia, horrible things at me. And when I went to one of the leaders of an organization, told them, hey, they told me this, and they told me that if I did anything they found inappropriate, or that if I had like pasties or something because I don't have breasts, that they would
Mhm.
cut my music and like and publicly embarrass me like that. So I was like,
Oh,
I'm
wow.
spending all my time, money, I'm paying to get up here and perform for this. Like it was not
Mhm.
worth it. So then that's when I decided to start doing my own shows, and I did my first show in 2009, I think.
Nice. And what was that show about?
Oh my god, it was so great. So so I fell in a hole at Wells Fargo, and I thought I wasn't gonna get anything from them, and I did end up getting $3,000. So I had that.
Nice.
And so I organized with the VAC. I had this idea to like do a show that celebrates all the artistry and drag. And it was gonna be called Gesam Kunstwerk, which means total work of art in German. And I thought
Mm.
it's about celebrating because at the time I stepped away from the local drag scene and started getting more involved in the local burlesque scene because they were doing exciting things. They were a lot more inclusive. They liked weird stuff. They like interesting, entertaining things, and so I was an interesting, entertaining thing, so so I fit in,
Mhm.
and I saw so much artistry there, and so much really cool enterprising. Like you remember Frankie?
Mhm.
She
Yeah.
had so many towns, and then she had so many different venues. There was like Pingilli's where you could go for free and see burlesque. There were like productions where like that you paid a cover, so there were like different places for like different accessibilities, and then just more shows throughout. Like before that, it would be like a show every month or every couple of
Yeah.
months, and with burlesque, they were doing like somewhere like bi-weekly, somewhere, and then some monthly ones. So they were a lot more, and then there are multiple ones throughout town through the months, and thought that was so cool, and I wanted that in drag.
Mhm.
So my first show was I wanted to mix both scenes, and so I had drag and burlesque performers, and then I also wanted a that we weren't getting had gotten a couple of outside performers, but we weren't really getting like the headliners here. So that's what I wanted also to bring to town, and so I booked Trixie Mattel for that one, and it was
Mm.
very expensive.
Yeah.
and
Was it a good
and it was
show
like
or
artistically, it's one of the best shows ever. It was incredible, but financially, no.
no? Yeah.
Financially, it cost like 4,000, and I lost about 3,000.
Oh wow. Yeah. So
So
it's
yeah, that was a once
very
in a
different
lifetime
now.
event. Yeah, that was a once in a. Hi, Riley.
Riley is loving this.
That was a
Kayla
once
is
in a
also
lifetime.
sending a heart.
That was a once in a lifetime event, and everybody who went to it can tell you it was incredible.
Do you feel like that was kind of the jumping off point for you as far, or like a milestone and really kind of, I don't know, pushing you to the next level or even pushing Boise to the next level?
Yeah, I would say it was a part of it. I wasn't the only one because, frankly, Burlesque was also
Hmm.
including drag performers. So there were other people that helped build the multifaceted scene we have now. But I think it was definitely part of it because before there was no place for weirdos, and there was no. And then I know a lot of people who went to that show and started doing drag. I think it was like I think I remember Elle was there in a really cool look,
Mm.
like one of their first times in drag. I think Annie and Hazel were there. And there's a lot of people who are too young who were too young to go who are now part of the drag scene as well.
Hmm. Yeah, yeah.
And
I
then
must.
I've done more shows, and then other people have taken notice or have brought in other performers. So it's been really cool to see how much the scene has grown. Now there's so many shows. Last week I did three back to back
Hmm. Yeah, I
in a
mean,
week.
Boise's really become quite the drag scene. I am so impressed, one, with just how much drag there is, and just the
Hmm.
variety of drag, the variety of performers, there's a lot of like BIPOC like representation and leadership, it seems, which is so different than,
Yeah,
you
and
know,
somebody will bring that up, and I'll be like, "Oh yeah, I totally just like that's not like I mean it's amazing, but it's not something that I'm really thinking about. I mean, I am
right,
thinking about like making shows so that have when I'm booking shows, I'll go to the people of color first to make sure I have a diverse cast.
right.
But I'm not thinking about like, oh, I'm a leader and I'm a pillar
Mm.
and oh, amazing,
Of course, of course, but
and
you
I'm
do
a
have to say
powerful
that
person of color.
it's very different though from when you started, for sure.
Oh yeah. There weren't any. Well, there were a couple, but like it wasn't. It's just a different scene.
Hmm. Yeah, yeah. I've been really impressed with just coming back to Idaho and just seeing the changes with just drag, but also just even just out aesthetic like gender presentation. Would you talk a
Hmm.
little bit about your gender identity and how that relates to your drag, if at all?
That's the amazing part about drag is that it allowed me to like. Well, first of all, it allowed me like growing up, being an immigrant, being undocumented, not being able to like afford to go to college. I wanted to work in fashion design. I wanted to have an art career. I went to college for the arts, but I couldn't afford it because I had to pay out of pocket. It's impossible.
Hmm.
But I tried. Um, but and then drag allows me to have an art career without all the drag career bullshit, like all
Right.
like I don't know if you're familiar with all the rich white peopleness of the art world. I'm sure you can imagine, and you just
Yeah,
have to like
I can imagine.
bullshit your way through pretending like everything has worth and it's
Mm,
super important. And it's
yeah.
so yeah, drag allows me to do what was the question?
About gender, actually, and how your gender identity and how drag impacts that, if at all.
Oh, gender. Sorry, that was I
That's
didn't answer
okay.
anything about gender. But yeah, it's yeah, it's been fascinating. I remember when I first started being in drag, not being comfortable with everybody calling me she, because it's
Hmm.
just like probably internalized misogyny and all that. But now I'm like it allows me to express all the parts of myself that I don't that had rejected or had put away to feel safe. So
Hmm.
it's been very liberating, and definitely don't feel like I'm somewhere. I definitely feel like somewhere in the not in either binary. So,
Yeah, yeah. And
but Uh-huh.
Go ahead. No, go ahead.
I said, but like, I think it's just that gender is such a personal question, and for me,
Mhm.
my gender journey has been that I'm like, I'm comfortable with the parts that fit the binary, and I'm comfortable with the parts that don't, and I think
Mhm.
that's the growth I've had, and drag has helped me so much through that.
Yeah, I definitely can relate to drag having kind of pulling my gender expression out of me and my comfort level outside of drag for sure. Definitely. And where would you say, I know like where would you say you land with your spirituality now? If like how would you talk about that?
It's rough because I'm like, I call myself the enemy of spirituality because that's what divine calls herself in female trouble. um, Drag is divine, literally.
Mm,
Oh
right?
my god, I'm such a divine fan. Anyway, yeah, it's been rough because as I get older, I have to deal with a lot different issues. And sometimes I think one of the ones that I think about a lot is like when somebody, like I've had people like when people pass away, one that just comes to when people pass away, the expected answer is always like thoughts and prayers because that's what
Mm,
people like, what people gives them meaning in life, what they cling to. I know my mom has been through so many medical just horrible things that she had to push through, and she talks about seeing the Virgin Mary and about like things that push her through. So I'm a little bit more like, I'm not that respectful to religion, but
mm,
I understand how the impact it has on people's lives, even if I don't believe it any of it whatsoever.
right, right.
uh, but yeah, it's been interesting having to navigate all of the things that religion is a part of in our society that without having those beliefs. So I
Hmm.
end up having to find ways to be genuine and caring without thoughts and prayers.
Yeah. That how what does that look like or sound like to you?
It just sounds like a genuine caring statement.
Hmm.
It just
Just
sounds like
saying.
acknowledging what's going on, trying to find peace, or just trying to give people room or let people understand or let myself understand that you have to mourn. It's okay to feel feelings. I don't know,
Hmm.
it just depends on the situation
Yeah.
and the
But it's
person.
right. But it sounds like finding a way to see and acknowledge and to be with someone in those times rather than just kind of like being like, oh, you're not dot dot dot, so I'm just not even going to address it, but really
Hmm.
finding a way to
Yeah,
communicate with one another
yeah.
where you're at with
Think
all that.
one of the things that like I thought about when leaving religion is that I find a lot more joy and a lot more meaning in living with the unanswered questions than with
Mm.
the answers that seem like they're completely made up.
Yeah, yeah. Uh, so yeah, I can definitely see that. I think especially in religion in particular, but everything feels so rigid. So it
Hmm.
seems really hard to like, I know for me to find myself in that or to see myself in that or to utilize
Hmm.
it in some sort of way.
Hmm.
Definitely. I thought I would just stare at you and see what happened for a second.
And I thought I would stare back and see what happens.
It'd be like, oh, what are they gonna
Oh, you
do?
think
What are
you're
they
gonna
gonna
get
do?
me, Bonnie?
Hmm. Yes. Well, and you said that you did identify as atheist, yes? Or no?
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
I thought I saw that in your beautiful little post today.
But yeah, I do put a lot of that religious trauma into my drag,
Mhm.
because it's
Did you say
interesting.
religious trauma?
Yeah, into my
Yeah.
drag because it's very interesting to examine because it's such a part of culture, and there's so much iconography and there's so much meaning, and there's
Hmm.
so much bullshit
Yeah, yeah.
that is so fun to play in. Like when I do a number as like the Virgin Mary, where like I cry bloody tears, but that's because I saw it on television.
Mm, yeah.
I have to tell you, I grew up watching there's these horrible shows on Spanish television called Primer Impacto and Al Rojo Vivo. First Impact, Vivid Red. So it's all
Mm,
like shock news.
Oh, uh-huh.
And my mom's an alarmist. It would be the worst. And they would show things like live exorcisms, like people who were possessed, and it would show like people doing like that thing where they like lament and they like walk on their knees for miles all bloody, or when
Oh,
they do
wow.
like the live crucifixions where it's like somebody and they get stabbed for real on the arms, or like the
Mhm.
saint statues are like bleeding or like they're crying and all that horrible, scary, horrible things. Like they
Yeah.
all, like I told you, I had an active imagination, so all that stuff really scared me. So
Yeah,
I
yeah.
love horror. So so that's also been a part of my drag. So my number where I do Virgin Mary was inspired by one of those newscasts where one of the figures was crying blood, which is so
Mhm.
creepy. All these things are not things that children like need to grow up seeing. It's so gory, it's so horrible,
Right.
and when it's presented as truth, it's just so damaging.
Mm.
Like my nephews, I love that my nephews love horror, and I love that I can tell them like, oh, it's all fake. Like, let me show you a behind the scenes of how it's made, so that you know they can sleep. I know that they can sleep at night and not live with the same fear. Like,
Kind of
and
the
now they
nightmares
like
that you had.
the other day I have to tell you they filmed themselves on their phone doing a little horror scene where one
Mhm.
was they're like 3 year olds, they're little tiny boys, and one of
Uh-huh.
them was a zombie and the other one was getting attacked. And like,
Oh,
they're like, oh,
wow.
let's look to see how it came out. In the video, they're talking about like, oh, let's stop and look and see how it came out. And then they
Oh,
texted it to
wow.
me. It was so cute.
Aw, that's so cool. And when you utilize iconography in your work, what does that do anything for you?
It it's a lot of fun.
Yeah. And what's your hope with the audience? Or is there?
I think you know what? Hmm. Well, my ultimate hope is I want to entertain. I want people to have a good time, and I want them to see something dazzling and cool, and and yeah. So
Does it
that's
help you
pretty
work
much my.
the
That's
do you
yeah.
do you feel like it helps you work through some of the trauma, like to heal from the trauma, or do you feel like you're,
I think
you
that
know?
the humor does, and so I share that too.
Mhm. Yeah, sorry, it seems our connections are being weird tonight.
It's fine.
That's that's the joys of this sort of stuff for sure. Let's take a quick little break. I'm gonna play like a little clip for like a minute, and then we'll come right back on. Okay.
Oh, okay.
All right.
When I was having the time of my life, just felt I wasn't there. I try to hold back the evil inside, but I know it isn't fair. You didn't know I was watching. I didn't mean to sneak around. But now I'm glad that it hit me, 'cause I can't believe what I found. You try to hold me back and control me. Everything's so great that would spoil me. You're self-fulfilling prophecy. I can't live like that. What do you want? Leave it all to you. What do you want? It's time to face pressure. What do you want? Don't force me to choose. I will choose my life. I will choose my life. Oh yeah. Oh yeah. I will choose my life. What do you want?
That was a little longer than I wanted, but hey.
I really liked that. I was able to breathe.
Right? I know, I just felt like I needed a second to like
Yeah.
catch my breath or something, you know? Yes. So I wanted to hear a little bit about, I know that you also identify as a Gothic gardener. And that's something that you do that as part of your drag as well, right?
Yeah. I during the pandemic, I started doing. I started a YouTube channel, I already had a YouTube channel, but I started a YouTube series where I wanted to share the love of gardening because when I first got into it, I thought it was like only for rich people and like
Mm,
because that's what's like if you go to the store, that's what it looks like seeing all these things and all these prices. It's like it's not for me. I'm not spending
mm,
all this money on all this nonsense. That's not gonna mean anything.
right, right.
But
But
then
so,
once. Mhm.
no, go ahead.
But then once I got into it, I realized that like no, it's not. Like you can find ways to find joy in all of that. Like my first when I first started gardening, I think it was so cool because so many of my plants, my outdoor plants, have come from other performers. Like,
Mm,
frankly, Frankie gave me like a whole bunch of cuttings from like pieces out of her garden that she just had in abundance that I could just grow. So
mm-hmm.
that was really cool. I gotten a lot from Lillian Stardust. I got some beautiful pink and white iris from Minerva. So I have some really cool plants that are really sentimental to me, and many of them are perennial, so they come back every year. So you just plant them
Oh, wow.
outside. They take care of themselves. They find their own water and nutrients. You don't really have to do anything. So
Mm-hmm.
there's those plants. I think my gateway plant was strawberries because I
Mm.
found out that they send out runners and they multiply. So they multiply every year. So you don't have to once you buy it once, you just keep getting more plants for
Oh,
free.
wow.
And I was like, what
Mm-hmm.
else does this?
Oh, right. What do you
Uh,
enjoy most about gardening?
uh I think it's there's the changing of there's always something like to discover or like I don't know. Plants are pretty. Flowers are pretty. um, it's fun to raise stuff from seed, and it's fun to eat stuff. It's fun
Mm,
to like when I do garden chores. Sometimes I'll some plants will like lean on the ground. I'll cut off the branches, and then I'll have cut flowers, and it's like it's so rewarding. And what was I gonna say? At first, I had to figure out like what kind of garden I wanted, and I thought, oh, fairy tale garden. But then I didn't want to like base a lot of my motifs around like German fairy tales, and I was like,
mm-hmm.
well, so then I started learning about like Mexican plants, like cosmos and dahlias. Were grown by Aztecs, and they were the tubers are edible. I think the flowers are edible too, and they multiply every year. So every year you get like more plants. And I don't know if you've seen dahlias, but they get really big, just like
Mm-hmm.
giant showy petals. They're incredible.
Yeah. Are they kind of like mum looking, right?
Yeah, but
They're
they're
like
like this big. They're really
huge.
big.
Yeah. Yeah. Dahlias are
Yeah, I hope
gorgeous.
you can come check out my garden.
Yeah. I'll have to come check out your garden
Yeah,
sometime.
and I'll give you plants. Are you growing anything?
Oh, I'm not growing anything yet. Maybe
Okay, well if
a
you
little
want to,
hair in my pit.
I'll have stuff to share and divide. And that's the fun
Yeah. Yeah.
part
That'd be,
about there's like a community aspect to all of this, which is really cool.
mm-hmm.
It's fun. Like the best plants are free.
Right. Yeah. Well, yeah. And it's nice. It sounds like too, it's like when people gift you those plants, it sounds like you get reminders of them. Like you can go out to your
Yeah,
yard and it's like you're out hanging out with Minerva or Frankie or, you know what I mean?
I
So
have
to speak.
lemon balm from Lillian Stardust over here.
Oh, nice. That sounds all really great. What are you looking forward to with drag? You're getting ready to get into some drag stuff, no? Kind of drag season. I mean, it's always drag season, but
Yeah, the cold season is the best drag season.
right?
You get done performing, you're all gross and sweaty and hot, and you just step outside into a little refrigerator, and it feels great.
Mm.
Yeah, well, there's a lot coming. I'm excited to do the Idaho Halloween and Horror Con again this year. I do this little show called Horror Divas Live, which is like a yassification, a queerification of horror icons. So
Mm.
it's a lot of fun,
That sounds
and it's been
awesome.
cool to go to a festival where that celebrates horror and to bring other people from the community into that. That's been really rewarding.
And that's local, right?
Yeah, it's local. It happens here. Last year, it happened at Red Lion. This year, it will
Mm.
happen. I think at the Expo Idaho. I'm not sure yet because they're still working on it.
Yeah. Oh, and Dragford is coming up. Are you involved with that?
Oh yeah, I'm performing on the Wednesday of Drag for their kickoff. Yeah, there. I have a whole list of gigs.
Nice.
There's so many cool things in Idaho now, and I love Drag for it. I love that it's like it's not really the city, but it's like an event in the city finally recognizing drag, because we have such a cool drag and burlesque scene in town
Yeah.
that very few people know about. Well, now they do, and they want to ban it all. But for a long
Yeah.
time, a lot of people didn't know what a great scene we have here. So it's been really cool
Yeah.
to be included, and it's been really affirming, and I'm really, really happy about that.
Yeah, that was gonna be kind of my next question. How do you feel like things are going to be in the future in Idaho when it comes to drag with all the political kind of conversation and stuff that's happening?
Well, I personally, one of my events was attacked. I got booked to do a show for BSU that was all ages. But
Hmm.
it's BSU, it's all college students. It's like 18, 19, 20 and up. So it's like it's not kids. I mean, you can bring kids and it's whatever. And like we performers know how to perform for all ages. Like we perform at Pride, we know what's appropriate and what's not appropriate.
Right,
So
right.
anyway, this I don't know if you're familiar with the BSU Republicans. They used to be really nuts. Now they're a full-blown white supremacist organization that's
Oh, wow.
funded by student funds. So they reached out to like Incel, who made articles about me specifically and about like the performances at BSU and wanting to, and just calling people like all the horrible
What
names.
they
At first, it
do.
was
Yeah.
so funny because it was just so ridiculous and
Yeah.
absurd.
Hmm.
But you can only get called all those horrible names so much before you start laughing because it's
Yeah.
not funny. The way that conservatives use sexual assault to attack people of color but don't really care about sexual assault is so gross. And then the way they use like uh grooming and
Yeah.
pedophilia to attack queer people, but they don't actually care about trafficking. They don't really care about there's organizations that focus on that. They're not talking
Right.
about those. They're talking about canceling people on the internet.
Hmm. Well, and there's already laws against those sorts of things.
There's
Drag
laws and there's
is not
organizations that
that,
focus on that
right?
they're not really talking about. They're only trying to attack queer people.
Hmm. How do you cope with all of this? How are you dealing with this, if you don't mind me asking? Because I've found it challenging myself too, and just kind of like I'm just curious how you're navigating it.
Well, I'm more concerned. I don't think that they're coming after drag, but I think who they're really coming after is trans people. So that's who I really have concern for, because that's who they're like when they talk about gender representation outside. They're not just talking about drag queens. They're talking about anybody who doesn't fit the binary, and it's
Yeah.
yeah, it's pretty scary.
Yeah. What would you say to people who what would you say to other drag artists right now in Idaho?
Oh, I thought you said to people who don't understand. Well, I do want to talk to people who don't
Either way, yeah.
understand.
I mean, either way,
I
wherever you want
think
to go.
I think it's ridiculous that well, I or something that people can use to bring out, but in these discussions is that like queer people are part of families, so all the weird like family values nonsense like doesn't make sense. But anyway, what I want to say is that that just like music, just like film, and drag is the same an art form. There's some that is for children, and there's some that is not. And the ones that are not for children, for all ages. And then the
Right.
ones that are for all ages, like we are all like smart adults. We know what is appropriate and not appropriate. We're part of families. We have children. We are children, so we know what's appropriate and not appropriate. I don't really know I can't even think.
Yeah, yeah. What would you say? Do you have anything you would say to other drag artists right now? Whether it was just supportive words or
It's difficult.
yeah.
Well, we do have I would say to get involved, to get organized. That's more important. That's the most important thing to do when you feel helpless.
Hmm. It's not be alone with it all, to really just kind of surround yourself
Hmm.
with people like yourself. Are you part of a drag family?
I never was, but throughout the years, I've had people who wanted for me to be their drag mom, and I always said no because like I
Was
never
there?
had one, and I want people
Mm,
to be their own unique individuals. I don't want them to be like a copy of someone else or to feel like. But I understand the importance of like having somebody to show you how to do stuff who has been doing it for a long
yeah,
time, or sometimes you just have like a really like deep connection where you want a sort of a relationship with somebody like that. So
yeah.
I have had now 3 kids. My first one was Teriyaki, who's living in Denver right now. Then I have Nikki Grimm
Hmm.
from town. She's an incredible performer,
Yeah.
uh, funny as hell. And then I have recently Chico Mia, who
Oh, mhm.
is a Brazilian performer here in town, and they're incredible.
Yeah. They'll be on the show on Saturday. So yeah, Saturday.
What
Chico
show is
will
that?
be this. They'll be they'll be where you are just on Saturday.
Oh yeah, the Britney show. Oh my God, yeah, come to Cookie Party. If
Yeah.
you're
So
queer and you like Britney Spears, come to Cookie Party.
yeah, I'm looking forward to doing that. I'll once I do the interview with Chico, then I'm gonna go and watch the show for sure.
Mhm.
Yeah.
Sorry, my brain is mush.
Oh,
My brain
that's
is mush.
okay.
I'm constantly promoting but
Yeah.
not like I have a
No,
lot to
it's all
do for
good.
that show. So I am it's in my mind of all the stuff I have to do that I'm
Yeah.
holding off till last minute.
Well, and I appreciate you kind of going along the journey. I know we talked about some exciting stuff, some less exciting stuff, and we're pretty much we're down to like the last few minutes. What would is there anything that you would like to say or talk about that you haven't talked about yet, or you would like to say again?
I just want to say that Bush did 9/11.
Oh, okay. My brain's all like, huh? What? Okay. I think that's for another podcast and another day, but so those are your final words for tonight.
No, I'm just curious. What have been some? I there's a question I wanted to ask you.
Hmm.
Um, what has been the challenge of doing this series? You talking to queer people about religion because it's such a tricky subject,
Hmm.
and I'm wondering what
Yeah,
challenges you've run into
yeah, it's
besides
difficult
me.
because right, but I mean even if I think even just your initial response was like, but I'm not spiritual or I'm not like whatever. And so I think a lot of us have our own spiritual trauma and religious trauma and things like that. And so we very much stay away from it. We're like, fuck off, and I've been that girl for a long time and I totally get it. I appreciate it and I understand it. Um, and also I've gotten a lot of healing from my spiritual trauma by, I think being intentional with my drag and those sorts of things. And so I understand. I think there were a lot more people who said they wanted to do it, but then ended up not doing it. And I know some of that comes down to timing, but I think also it comes down to having the emotional capacity and the ability to really be able to go through this conversation because it just brings up a lot for folks. And I think for many of us, we keep these parts of ourselves separate. Like even if we're kind of at home wrestling with spirituality or whatever, we go to the bar, we go do our shows, and we just kind of like leave it somewhere else. And so I understand the need to keep it separate. And so that's a lot of why I do this series too, is to help people see that it can be integrated. And for some folks, it's helpful and useful. For other folks, it's not. And that's perfectly okay. I've just gotten so much personal growth from it. And I love hearing about other people's experience about spirituality. And I love drag. And so it was just kind of a nice way to bring it together. But it's a common challenge everywhere.
And
Like I
isn't
can
it
hear,
wild that like it's religious attacks that are behind what's going on right now too?
yeah, well, and
Like,
yeah, it's crazy that like religion and God and this thing that's supposedly give us life is the thing that also causes us not to want to live anymore. Like just to kind of go back to like the beginning of some of your narrative and my own too. It's like it's crazy that that thing that we are told that gives us life is also that's going to take it because we're not of value, which seems so contrary to the whole idea of whatever it is anyway. I'm not like I was raised Christian, so like lean to that. Plus we're in a Christian, as much as we don't like, it's not called a
Mhm.
Christian country, it is. Like we're impacted by Christianity so
Yeah,
deeply.
the attacks
You
are
can't
Christo
escape it.
the attacks currently on drag and trans people are Christo fascists, is what they are.
Yeah, well, but you do also have a lot of people, like I think for some people it is a spiritual thing, but there are plenty of people who hate us who don't give a shit about God either. Do you know what I mean? And that's also another, I think, challenge, because I have like
Mhm.
family members and stuff that have problem with me, and it has nothing to do with their church. Do you know what I mean? Like there's something else going on, and I think that's part of the challenge, is that there's so many things kind of happening all at once that it's really hard to figure out how do you combat it.
Yeah, there's definitely very nuanced, but what brought about that thought is what happened to Miss Kelly G in Pocatello. That
Yeah,
was all people from a church who decided, let's go sit in and prevent all these kids from hearing this drag queen tell a story. So that
yeah,
was that was yeah.
I don't understand. I honestly, I don't understand it. Yeah, I mean, they all went in there and basically all the kids got kicked out because all the adults stole their seats. It's like, I don't understand how that's I don't get it. I really don't understand it. But
Yeah, in conclusion, I want religions to pay taxes.
right. Yeah, I mean, I just wish that we could I don't think the goal is to understand one another. It's to have
Mhm,
compassion for one another
mhm.
as fellow human beings on this earth, like, and whatever that is that's causing people to be so harmful, that it makes me sad that there's something in people that causes that in them. Do you know what I mean? And I don't know how to fix that. I just know that I've not always been beautiful. I've had some ugly, and oftentimes my ugly has come from pain or hurt, harm. And I just am eager to find a way that we all can kind of like heal and, be better with one another, regardless of how
And maybe
different we
that's
are.
what's kept me from religion is that I understand the dangers of that cult thinking and that dogma. Even in like, so you have that with religion with Christofascism, and then in more of the spiritual non
Yeah.
Christian, you have like you also have a lot of people. You have cults. you
Yeah.
have uh, you have that like new age spirituality that turns people into crazy narcissists.
Yeah. Yeah.
So there's like religion can be, so that's why it's like looking for another kind of sort of set of beliefs hasn't 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 appealed to me ever. But
Yeah.
I definitely understand spirituality and more of a I'm leaning far and farther and farther from all the colonial beliefs and trying to think back to my indigenous
Yeah.
roots and like putting more of that, and a lot of that is just like loving nature and loving what's already here. And
Yeah.
that I definitely practice that, but I wouldn't call it a set of beliefs. It's just like it's living with the questions and being in awe of everything that exists.
Yeah. Yeah. No, totally. I totally get that. Yeah. I say spirituality sometimes because it seems like it's easier, but for me, it's just like I know that I just feel like there's a spirit that lives within me, that lives between you and I and within you, and that kind of brings us all together. And I
Yeah,
think,
life. We're alive.
right. And
That's pretty incredible.
the more that I can, and so for me, spirituality is existing as if I know that to be the truth.
Mhm.
And because when I can do that, I think I'm a little bit more mindful about how I am in the world and how I impact the creatures and the people and that which is around me. And so to me, that's spirituality, is just being mindful of all life. Um, but yeah, but I've struggled with finding religion or community around that, even because it is so, you know, colonized and appropriated and misguided, and it's really hard. And that's why I like talking with people, because I don't know the answers. I haven't figured it out. I'm just curious to know how people are living their life, what is giving them life, and hearing them talk about that, it kind of gives me life too, you know? Yeah. So I
Yeah,
think,
interesting that you bring up the word community because that word is used a lot, and then that
mm,
gets me thinking about to like what community means. Like we
mm,
talk about the LGBT community, but like we don't all live together. We don't all get
no,
along. We don't all have
yeah,
that much in common.
yeah. Well, in community,
But
but community can take us apart, can take us away from each other too. It all just depends on what our
yeah,
understanding is of what community is or isn't, you know?
and then talking about what it looked like in Mexico, where you live next to everybody and you could go anywhere, and over here it's like
Hmm.
individualistic. There's not really a the word community is not really a thing
No.
in like living spaces. It's more of like a virtuous sort of like
Hmm.
signaling, like oh but it's not really like a physical thing.
Yeah, our
But
culture doesn't support it.
I definitely feel the drag community for sure. That's definitely
Hmm.
so important to me because it's definitely a support system, and it's loving art, and it's loving queerness.
Mm. Yeah.
And all those things are so important to life.
Indeed, indeed, indeed. Well, thank you so much for taking the time this evening. I enjoyed getting to chat with you more the last couple of nights. We've known each other for a really long time, and I feel like we've spent less time in conversation than the amount of time, obviously, that we've known each other. And I'm eager to be in the same city and to be in more conversations with you in the
Yeah,
future.
you better come over. You
I
better come
will.
over in
I
the
got to go over to
spring
your
when everything's
garden and
pretty.
eat the dahlia or something. Those probably aren't edible, huh?
You know what? They might not taste very good because people don't eat them anymore. But
Yeah, yeah. All right. Well, thank you so much. Have a good night. Have a good night, everybody who joined us. And join me on Friday night with Serafina and on Saturday with Chico Mia. So check out the links in
love
the
them.
description. Take care. Have a good night, everybody. Love ya. Bye-bye.